I'm Tim Norris, and I want to tell you about a mission trip that I took to Napakiak, Alaska, August 6th through 14th with the Southern Baptist Disaster Relief. It truly was a journey of faith, of adventure, and of purpose. Our purpose was to help the people of Napakiak, who've had a really rough journey the last several years. They've got quite a few problems with their city that we'll get into and we'll talk about. And besides helping them, our purpose was to share the love of God. Well, Napakiak is not an easy place to get to. We started off flying from Columbus to Chicago, had to leave Columbus at about 5 in the morning. So we got to the airport around 3, and then we flew from Chicago to Anchorage on a 7-hour flight. God blessed us, though, with a very clear day to where we could look down and we could see these beautiful mountains as we crossed over the mountain range and the Harding ice field. It was amazing to me to just see how much ice and how much snow is still there in August. These glaciers just flowed out of the mountains, and it was just so beautiful to see these rivers of ice that were moving down, carving their way and creating the earth as we're just flying over it. You can see all those little glaciers just hanging down on those mountains there. Uh, Again, rivers of water flowing down, creating God's earth. Once we were in Anchorage, we got this great picture of this moose, and one of our team members took a picture with it. Well, from Anchorage, we had to fly over to Bethel. Bethel is a very interesting airport. They get one flight per day. They also have several other flights for goods and things, but only one flight with people. It's kind of interesting. You walk down the jetway and you're right on the tarmac. Basically, it's just stairs, and then you go into this building that's obviously not built to handle a plane of that size, as everybody's in here waiting for their luggage and waiting for their people. Well, Bethel's Alaska's eighth largest city, has a population of 6,325, and it's home of the Yupik peoples. But our final destination is downriver, about 10 miles. And it was a very interesting river, a very wide river. It's about a mile in width. We loaded up into a van and got to our boat, which there was our boat waiting for us to take us down to Napakiak. We loaded all the luggage into some of it in the front, some of it in the back, and then we had all 10 of us in the boat. The boat was quite a rough ride. The temperature was about 48 degrees, and the people that were out in front, I felt bad for. They did have full rain gear, but it was extremely cold. We went down this river, and the wind was blowing about 20 to 30 miles an hour, and we were moving right along because we had quite a destination or distance to get to our destination, and it was quite rough, so we took a slough. The slough wasn't very wide, but the driver was still able to go a pretty good clip down through there. He thought that would help us ease some of the roughness of the water. When we got back out onto the main part of the river, though, we ended up getting stuck on a sandbank and gravel bar, and then the motor overheated. But we finally did make it to our destination. We unloaded our luggage, put it into the pickup truck, and we all got onto the pickup truck, and they put the boat on the truck as well, and we drove towards our house or accommodations. As you can see, the river is eroding away a lot of the road, and it was quite a job to get the boat out of the river and up onto the shore. But there's some damage that was done to our prop and skag from getting stuck on that sandbar. And there's one happy camper for getting to Napakiak. Like I say, we arrived at our house that we were staying at for the week. This is the mission house. You can see that there's some water tanks outside. There's also water tanks inside the house. This was our sidewalk to get there, so it's quite muddy. Very wet city. And they have this elevated walkway from the workshop to the house. So it's kind of nice in the wintertime, I'm sure, to not have to trudge through the snow. But this is what the yard looked like, just an extremely wet area. And this was our sleeping quarters or accommodations. It really worked out pretty well. And there's 500-gallon tanks that were inside the house with a pump so that it doesn't freeze. Napakiak has a population of 320 people. And there's two sections of town. There's the old town, and then there's the new town. The new town's back up the river a little bit on a little higher elevation, and it's up that slough. The problem with Napakiak, one of the things they're facing is an erosion problem. And that yellow line represents where the riverbank was in 2003. Here you can see 2017, 2019, how that river has eroded away. That big building is the school, and you can notice in 2021 the school was there. This is what it looks like in 2021. You can see a big erosion hole right up close to the school. They decided to take half of the school off before they lost it, and then they've since taken the whole school off and built a new school. That red line represents where I believe the erosion is as of right now. So in 1985, this is an old picture. The yellow is where it was in 2003. The blue shows where it is in 1985. So they've lost over 600 feet of riverbank in the last several years. Here's from 2019 to where I believe it is today. That school's totally gone. That little house that you see behind the school, that was the principal's house, and it's still there today, but it is on blocks and getting ready to be moved. Well, because of that erosion, the government decided that they were going to move all the houses and buildings from Old Town to Newtown area. So in 2021, they sent a crew up. They hired an independent contractor to start moving some of the buildings. Of course, they started with the ones that were closest to the river. However, it was a very slow process, and it seemed like there was no huge hurry until they had the typhoon hit Napakiak on October 12th, 2025. So the storm had 100-mile-per-hour plus wind gusts. The water rose 6.3 feet above the highest tide, and the flood penetrated over 60 miles inland. In Napakiak, 19 houses either shifted or were knocked completely off of their foundations. Some of the houses moved several feet. 15 boatloads of people were brought to the new school, which opened only weeks before. I definitely feel like it was a God thing that the school had been finished and just opened a few weeks before. Our first job was to move, or not move, but get this house ready to move that was pushed off its foundation and up next to the road. It was sitting at quite an angle, so we decided to raise the lower end first. We had to dig these holes out, put these pads underneath there, and then using air, we were able to pump air into the pads, and we were able to raise the house about 2 inches at a time. The ground was extremely wet and saturated, so a lot of the blocking would sink. But we would go and use those pads to get about 2 inches until we got enough time to, or enough height, I guess I should say, to get hydraulic jacks in. Once we got hydraulic jacks in, we could move it about 3 to 4 inches at a time. And then when we got enough room, we were able to get these big yellow hydraulic jacks in. Those jacks weighed about 200 pounds per jack, and we had to work them in underneath the house, crawling in and getting the jacks situated and positioned on blocks. Once we got those in, the last part of raising the house went fairly quickly. We would block as we go so that the house would be stable, and it was just quite a job. So those old beams, we took some old beams and put them underneath the house. They were beams from the school, and it was too heavy to lift, so we decided to get the loader in on the backside and lift the beams up, but we got stuck because you can see how soft that ground was. So we had to get another loader to pull that loader out. We ended up working 2 days on this house to get it ready to move, but in the end, we finally got it accomplished. None of us really knew what we were doing, but God gave us the ability to get it raised up so that they could get a trailer under it to move it at a later date. So that was the first 2 days. So we went to Pastor Job's church, which was in his house, and it's Napakiak Armory of God's Baptist Church. Anyway, they had some great songs, some great music. They sung in their native language, and then we got to sing as well. Well, like I said, church was in their home, and it was really neat because after church, they tore all the chairs down, rearranged them, put tables up, and the wife had food ready for us. We actually had a bunch of different fish. It was very good. One of the only things to do for the kids in the Napakiak is to play at the playground, and it was really neat to see these kids out playing there, just having a good time. Well, Pastor Job and his wife are both pilots, and they have two planes. This plane was my favorite as it was a bush plane. They use these planes to fly to remote villages for different church services. So they actually serve several churches throughout the area. This was one of the only planes I've ever seen that has a spade mounted to it, just in case you get stuck. So they use both of these planes to haul in people to actually hold the Bible school at each of the villages that they went to. They did 6 1 week Bible schools, so it was quite an undertaking, and this was the last week that they had Bible school, the week that we were there. So the planes were flying in and out quite a bit. Well, they took us for a ride, and we got to see this beautiful country from the air. And it's just amazing to look and see all the water, all the little sloughs that are running around. It's just an amazing facility. We actually ended up getting to see some moose out in the field, and Job circled around for us so we could get a better picture. It was the end to a great day. Well, Monday was back to work day, and we arrived at this house that belonged to one of the village elders. And it was in the flood, and it had to have the insulation in the bottom and the floor replaced, as well as the main wood of the floor. And since it was something that somebody else could do before we got there, we did not have to do that. What we needed to do was jack it up. However, mosquitoes were terrible, and we had to put these mosquito nets on because they would have eaten us alive if we didn't. So there's two more mosquito nets. Pretty much everybody got their net out and put them on. Well, we had some dogs coming by. They would want to see what was going on, and so we had some of the villagers stop by as well to just see what we were doing. It was a good chance to interact with the villagers as they would stop by and ask what's going on. So we ended up jacking this up. I believe we jacked it up about 2 feet total. Well, they say everything besides the mosquitoes are bigger in Alaska, and that seems to be true. This is a 17.5 inch skill saw, and it made light work out of cutting 12 by 12s. You go through one side, turn it around, and then cut the other. Well, once we got the house lifted up to where it needed to be, we put it on stilts. And so we placed these, we had these pads down there, and then we put our wood blocks up. This is the actual lumber yard where we would get the lumber for the bracing for the house. Once we got the house all set on its stilts, we put all these braces underneath and got it nice and secure for the future. Well, the next project was to work on this community storage shed. Somebody had lifted it up. It had been sitting on the ground, and the floor had a big hole in it where some of the beams had rotted out and some of the floor joists had to have been cut. And it's got a lot of work that needs to be done yet. But what we had to do is cut these 3 by 12s. We'd cut them 3 feet. There's a pad that's not screwed down yet. We had to make sure we had them all in the center, but you would have three 3 by 12 side by side, one 3 by 12 down the middle. Then cut those big beams out to specific heights once we got it laser leveled, and then we would set the building back down on those pads and on those beams. It was quite a job cutting those, but it was pretty amazing. We had a bunch of these old pieces of wood that were beams that we could use, and we just cut them up and set the building back down. So a lot of the cribbing that was used to lift the building was in the way of where the pads needed to be. So we had to remove a bunch of the cribbing, crib up in different areas, lift in areas where we didn't have to put the pads, then dig out flat spots to put the pads to set the building back down on. So it was an incredible process. We ended up getting it done, and I think the only way we did is because we had the help of God guiding our hands, because none of us really knew what we were doing. And the building obviously wasn't that structurally sound. Well, the last working day was a much easier day. We had a shed that we had to tear down. I didn't get a picture before we started, but it was a complete shed. We put everything underneath the man's house, and there we had the shed all tore down and thrown in the truck to haul away. The man that owned the shed made us this great salmonberry dessert, and it was really tasty. So we hauled the shed and any other trash that we had out to the landfill. The landfill was closed, so you just had to pile stuff outside of the landfill, and then they would take care of things at a later date. Any good lumber that we had left over, and then all the cribbing we took back to Pastor Job's church and piled it up out in front of it so it could be used later. This dog was the foreman, actually the foreman's dog, and he was overseeing moving this house down the road. So it was kind of cool to finally get to see one of the houses going down the road. They actually had to lift all the power lines to get it under. One of the village elders invited us to a planning meeting for electricity for Napakiak. And one of the big issues with electricity in Napakiak is electricity costs over $100 per kilowatt hour. And for reference, in Anchorage, it's about 25 cents. And in Knox County, Ohio, it's only 15 cents per kilowatt hour. So they're at a big disadvantage. So they were talking about solar and wind energy options for the village. Well, the people of Napakiak have proven themselves to be a very resilient people. And everything they've went through, from losing part of their town to erosion to the flooding, it's just amazing how positive of an attitude they still have. It's my hope that not just the work that we did to help make their buildings a little better, but the conversations that we had with people and the conversations we had with them about the Lord Jesus will sink in, and that somehow their lives will be better off spiritually through talking with one of our chaplains or any of the team members that they interacted with. I just hope and pray that Napakiak heals, the people of Napakiak heal, get restored, and get to a better life.